And we are live. Another day, another live stream, right? That's what they say. How is everybody doing today? We're gonna wait. We're gonna let people know that the Eradicator is in, right? Drinking a little bit of coffee, getting ready. We've got an interesting video to watch today. An interesting video with Mr. Oh, there we go, Mr. Jared here from his home. His background is very busy. Jared has been a spoiled man for Christmas. It's good. I missed the Christmas tree though. It was looking very nice. Looking very sharp hairstyle, sharp mustache as well. Jared looking good. I'm glad to see that Jared is taking care of himself. That's good. We're starting to get people coming in. Hello. Welcome to the live stream. We'll be together for quite some time. Normally at this time, I live stream on Twitch, but oh no, we lost already someone. Normally at this time, I stream on Twitch, but today, I don't know, man. I felt like, I've already experienced Star Citizen at 3.12.1, and it's working quite alright. It was definitely working better than the regular 3.12, and I'm not going to have any Xenothreat event for at least 11 hours, because here the Xenothreat events start at 4 a.m. where I live. 10 hours. So at 4 a.m., guys, I'm telling you, I'm sleeping at 4. I'm tired as hell already right now, so I'm working a lot for my real life job. I'm not going to go to a place just Star Citizen and Xenothreat at 3 o'clock, at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. No way. So the next question is, hello there, Steph, or should I say Guten Tag? Maybe, I don't know. So my question was like, am I going to go to the PTU and not experience Xenothreat, which is a shame. It's like eating cake without cream, you know. It's like, oh, there's not much left if you don't have cream. Or should I go to the PU but experience all the flaws that have been fixed in 3.12.1? And the answer to that was no. Was no to either of those. I'm not going to play the PU. I'm not going to play the PTU. Instead, I thought, you know what? I'm going to spend some time right here on YouTube with the community here on YouTube. I know you guys have been saying, Irad, you've been doing all those live streams on Twitch. I don't like Twitch. I prefer YouTube. So it's like, you know what? Let's spend some time with the community here on YouTube as well. All right. Well. It's a long episode. Before we get started, guys, it is a long episode. Look at that, 1 hour and 1 minute. Great. We're gonna have lots of bones to chew, hopefully, and maybe hopefully a lot of content to be dissecting all together. So I don't know. I think I'll be waiting until 6 o'clock here. It's 5:53. We'll be waiting until 6 o'clock. Just checking with you guys. How you guys are? We got Der Steph here. Der Steph here is from, I can tell, I could be from Germany if he speaks German as well. Where are you from, Der Steph? Tell us a little bit more about yourself. I could tell he was a German speaker because der means the for male gender in German, for those of you who don't know. So that's why. That's how I could figure it out. And we don't have much. We don't have anyone else. All right. Well, that's okay. I guess we can. I guess maybe they want to start. They want to start the event. Oh, it could be Frankfurt. So Frankfurt am Main. That's great there, Steph. You're from Frankfurt, so you must probably, maybe, you must have been stuck in the traffic with Brian Chambers, perhaps. Or who knows, maybe you've been in the same train as Brian Chambers, or the same restaurant, on the same beer garden. Maybe, I'm sure you have beer gardens in Frankfurt as well, right? I love Germany there, Steph. I love Germany. I've been to Germany so many times. But the problem with Germany, I'm telling you a little story here before we start our live stream. Almost every time I go to Germany, I get food poisoned. It's true. Every time I get sick. The last time I went to Germany, it was so bad. My wife said, we are not going to Germany ever again. We had a 4-day trip to see some family. I got food poison on my first day and on my third day. So I enjoyed my trip for just a couple of hours because the rest of the time I was food poisoned the whole time. And the worst part is I had rented a car. Because normally I would drive straight from where I lived in the west of Germany. The country that's west, I would drive straight to wherever I have to go in Germany. But this time we thought, it would be more relaxed to take the plane and then just rent a car in Munich. So we rented a car in Munich, and it was so we had our first. It was cold, it was snowy, and we had our first stop in Regensburg. So that's where I ate. First I drank a beer, and then I ate some Weisswurst. And of course, Weisswurst, and that was a bad combination. It was late. It was 1:30 p.m. I drank the beer first, and then I ate the sausages. And then when we arrived 2 hours later, I was just like, I feel really uncomfortable. I spent my entire evening vomiting and throwing up. This is just horrible. And it took me about 24 hours to recover. And after that, when I recovered, we went to a pizza place, a Greek restaurant that serves pizza, and they have this red hot chili pepper pizza. I was like, oh yeah, I love red hot chili peppers. So it was the spiciest thing I've ever eaten in my whole life, and I swear to God, I have never been so sick after that. And the worst thing is, after that, I had to drive the car back to Munich because it was a rental car, and we stopped at every single rest stop we found on the on their autobahn on the way back to Munich. So yeah, little story here about Germany, Steph. I know Germany very well. All right. Enough with that, guys. It is going to be time to start our little live watch here of Tony Z and hey, Dr. Forbin or Colossus. Long time no see. How are you doing, Dr. Forbin? # Colossus. And look at that with that very fancy eradicated emote. I have a couple of new emotes. Sorry. Oui, qu'est-ce qu'il y a? Jeff. Oh, wait. Hold on, guys. Papa. Sorry about this. That's why we start the live stream at 6 o'clock, right? Sometimes I have my father's duties to to take care of, right? Yeah. Good and bad times in Germany, like me. All right, great. What I was gonna say? Oh yeah, Colossus here getting that nice little emote. I put some new emotes on Twitch. You will be seeing them on YouTube as well. By the way, just in case you were wondering. All right. Pulling those sleeves here, and here we go. Let's get started. Let's see what Jared and Mr. Tony Zurovek have to say about dynamic events. It's always going to be a fun one. We got that Thread dynamic event coming up really soon in the PU, and it probably is going to be the first of hopefully many, right? Here we go. Let's is it full sound? Yes, let's go.
Working on. Sometimes we watch them make something live. Today we have a gentleman who's probably no stranger to most Star Citizens, but we're going to take the time to introduce him anyway. Meet Tony Zurovek.
Oh,
Tony,
yeah.
how you doing, man?
Hi, how's it going? Tony Zurovek, Director of Persistent Universe.
All right, so the Director of Persistent Universe, we're just going to jump right into this. The last time we saw you was CitizenCon 2949.
Oh yeah, we got a VIP today. We got a VIP special fund. Says Randy Stalker. How are you? It started right now. Yes, David. It just started. I started a minute early, but yeah. It's been a long time since we've seen Tony. We don't have those pillar talks. Unfortunately, we need the return of the pillar talks. It probably is a little difficult to run those pillar talks with the coronavirus. Unfortunately, maybe I don't know. Maybe they will be back when finally everybody gets immune, right? let's continue here and let's see what Jared has to say.
Years, right? I checked in with our data solutions teams. We've gained over 500,000 citizens since then. So somebody watching right now has no idea who you are. So take a few moments before we jump into this. Tell them who you are.
Now that's incredible. Can you believe that since CitizenCon, since I had no idea, because I don't really look at the metrics, the front page saying, oh, we got this amount of citizens, but apparently we got, here Jared says 500,000 new citizens. Are we talking about duplicate accounts or actual new players? This of course is probably another interesting debate.
You are what the director of persistent, or what your position does, some of the things you work on. I'm gonna get out of your way.
I have a lot of focus on what I'd say is like the simulation of the world, getting all the systemic elements operational, AI and mission architecture, back-end services that provide a lot of information to the game servers. Also, a lot of some of the occupational stuff we're working on. Some advanced bounty hunting, functionality. A lot of the interfaces, for everything from from shops to insurance to cargo loading. Just it's really a wide variety of things.
He's a busy man. That's what he says. Let me answer the questions here. It's going to be a long live stream, guys, by the way. I expect a good hour and a half, maybe 2 hours, right? Hi, everyone. It started, right? Yeah, it is started. So, do you think Crusader on the roadmap, that a new weather system and better clouds are coming in at the same time? Randy Stolkup, I don't think that they have to. Randy, I don't think that they have to. It would be great if yes, right? I mean, come on, it's a gas giant. You would be expected to be within at least some kind of clouds, right? When you go to Horizon, I mean, that's how it looks like on the concepts as well. But it is quite a big technical hurdle. Let's not lie to ourselves. It hasn't. I don't think. I mean, there's only one game that has been able to do it properly, in my opinion, and that is Flight Simulator, the latest one, and it is very impressive. It is mind-blowing, and it took them probably a long time, right? Not to mention that technology on Flight Simulator is all related to real data. On Star Citizen, we don't have real data because those planets are not real, right? So it's probably, I would say that making those volumetric clouds and making them work and flow across the planet is probably even more difficult in Star Citizen than in Flight Simulator, I would guess. So I don't know. They could always, put some kind of no-fly zone if you go to a certain, depth within the gas giant, and you would have some kind of, instead of having a skybox, a bottom box, right? The opposite of a skybox. Normally you have the skybox on top. Here the skybox would be on the bottom, right? Which would not be reachable, and if you get down to a certain point, your ship would explode. A bit similar to how it is right now. If you're trying to go to Crusader, at some point your ship will explode as well. So they could do that. Apart from that, I don't see how they could not have volumetric clouds and better atmosphere when Crusader hits, of course. David says, why would I make another account? Well, you could have a Smurf account, you could have your regular lawful account and then the criminal account, or you could have a trader's account and a combat account. That's what people do. That's what people do. I don't have a second account, David. I only have one. So I'm not one of those extra 500,000 new citizens or accounts. I've always been the eradicator, always will be. I don't see the point of having a second account personally, but yeah, some people do, right?
All over the map.
The systemic services, like the day-to-day operation of the persistent life in the persistent universe, kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, there's multiple aspects of that. Historically, it's been a lot of focus on the persistent stuff. That's now starting to shift over to a new group is basically going to take it and run with that. And we're going to basically affect a handover, a transition, and we're basically taking some of those existing resources, and we're going to retask them with helping to add some additional bandwidth into some of these areas that we've been wanting to flesh out for an extended period of time, but there were always, so many other higher priorities. And we think just, as of pretty recently, like within the last, literally, month or so, we've finally eliminated enough of the bottlenecks on the back end side to where we can, pretty confidently support, at least 20,000 players, concurrently. Might be higher. It's difficult to say until you actually get, stress test some of these things. But we ran into some problems at the Fleet Week, the 2020 Fleet Week, and we took the lessons we learned there, and it was kind of unfortunate timing in that particular case, because we knew that we weren't going to be able to support, more, dramatically more players than we had in the near-term past when we launched that event. And we didn't, really think that was, going to be a problem, because we had, for the previous, year, we had it in our development schedule to deliver, the final bits of iCache and to basically scale a number of, the loadout service, the variable service, all, to cache all the login credentials, all of this type of stuff that we're supposed to, to alleviate, to mitigate a lot of these bottlenecks. And unfortunately, that last Fleet Week event proved to be so popular that we wound up, during probably about twice the number of concurrent users that we actually expected.
Yeah, that is insane. Hey, Daniel Sweden, how are you? Yeah, that Fleet Week, I gotta say that Fleet Week event, it's hard to say, Fleet Week event was really, really popular. I personally, to me, Fleet Week was just, another sale. There was a free fly event, cool. I did not really see the point of Fleet Week. It's not like when we are having, for example, the Expo, which is like a big car show, right? Or here Geno Threat, where let's be a little bit RP, right? Where the entire system is being under attack by some terrorist groups, and we've got some good citizens to defend the system. You know what I mean, right? Fleet Week is just the UE Navy and bringing in there was like 2 Idrises and 1 Javelin, right? Is that how it was? But apparently, lots of people were excited about the idea of flying alongside those capital ships that were making their way for the very first time in the verse, and it brought a lot of players. I can't believe they don't have the back end to. Oh, they didn't, at least. They didn't have the backend to have more than 20,000 players playing at the same time, and they ended up with 40,000. That is insane. I really wonder. Yeah, users are high right now. It's nice to see Live and PTU so active indeed, Colossus. But at the same time, if what they're saying is true, that we got 500,000 more citizens since the last season con, that could explain why apparently we're getting more and more players, right? Exactly. Randy Stallcup says in the chat, when Tony Z talks, he is channeling millions of tiny scientists that live in a secret society inside his head, all speaking together as a Borg collective. That's fantastic. Fantastic. Yes. Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020 is very impressive, Colossus. It's very impressive. I haven't played it for a long time. Adrian A says, good day and all, the Eradicator, Yes, I know, Adrian.
And so what that did is it caused us to reprioritize some things so that we could get select pieces of that, of that functionality out sooner. And many of those things are now operational. And so while there's still definitely plenty more to do, we think that we've got a decent amount of headroom given where given where we think the community involvement is going to be for the next few quarters, and then longer term, we've obviously got some major initiatives still on the horizon, like server meshing, which is where we're actually looking to distribute the workload across as many servers as is necessary, so that we can start to scale up the actual number of players within a given instance or shard of the game.
All right, so...
All right, well, it's good that I hope that they will talk a little bit more about server meshing as well. It's good to have, more and Tony Z overall, right? So, seems like they're going to get started here, so good. And a lot of people, it's very interesting they were mentioning those events, because, yeah, a lot of people think, hey, it's cool to have events, but why don't we have gameplay instead of events? How about having both, since we have so many different teams in working for CIG? And I think that those events here are very important for people like Tony Z to gauge here what are the limits of the game and what they can do to improve stability, what they can do to improve the overall player experience when a lot of players are concentrated in one particular camp. I think that those events, in fact, are very helpful for the future of the game because they get to scale what it is currently capable of and give a clear indication of what they are going to have to work on to improve. Adrian A says that gameplay would be an event themselves.
You just mentioned knowing where players are going to be and stuff for the next couple quarters. That brings us to the topic of this particular show, which is dynamic events. Now, dynamic events is a phrase that our community has heard several times, whispers here and there over the last year.
On the roadmap too?
Going back to 2019.
On the roadmap too?
Back when we referred to it as timed events in some of the monthly reports stuff. Let's just start things off with a primer here. What is a dynamic event?
So you have to give a little bit of explanation first. Like, the long-term objective for Star Citizen has always been a dynamic, evolving universe. Most of our existing content to date, though, has been inherently static. So missions are offered at a given price at a particular location because a designer dictated it, not because something within the economic pipeline actually required that work be done.
Yeah,
so,
I'm sorry, but this is exactly what Genothreat is. It still is a scripted event. So it will be interesting. Yeah, Tony, please, and I'm going to stop interrupting Tony now, but please explain to me how Genothreat right now is not a glorified version of some of the missions that we have right now. Please tell us.
If you're refueling, reloading, or repairing a ship, that doesn't actually increase the demand and thus the price for the associated commodities and components at refineries or shops. Similarly, the likelihood of running into a pirate on a given route doesn't waver regardless of whether a lot of unarmed cargo transports carrying valuable materials start traveling that path. So Quantum, which is the simulation that I showed off at the last CitizenCon, that's the primary method by which we're going to address this. And it simulates the effect of a vast amount of AI, and it then feeds those results to the game and then factors player actions back into the simulation. So you wind up with this very logical ebb and flow that you'd expect, and that creates a lot of temporary opportunities for people to exploit, and in general, it just makes the game feel far more interesting to play.
Yeah, but are we using Quantum for Genothreat? That's what I want to know then, because Genothreat does have lots of NPCs on the good side, on the bad side. Are we using Quantum as well to bring them in based on the amount of players that are around, or is that scripted?
So dynamic events are different. You can think of them.
Okay, it's different.
You can think of them a bit as designer-driven short stories that can be layered on top of Quantum's systemic background, and they can be triggered manually or automatically when certain conditions are met. So if the system decides that war is broken out in an area, or we just decide that we want to liven things up a little, then designers and writers can inject a lot of precisely curated content into the game, and the impact of those modifications will then be blended into the simulation.
Okay, so devs do have some actual control of the event as it is happening. Let's say so what they're saying is that theoretically, let's imagine, for example, you got a group of griefers. Griefers. I did say the word. A group of griefers killing everyone on site just because they think it's good. Then the devs could bring in in theory, right? Could bring in a javelin to clear the area, right?
But you said there's two ways to trigger them. Either we can set up situations, criterias in which the players meet them, and the system automatically goes, oh yeah, trigger this particular event that's been designed, or we can trigger them manually.
That is insane.
Describe to me the difference there. Why would we use one over the other for a particular situation?
Well, it's actually similar to a lot of what we've done with the normal development cycle, which is, on the one hand, we're putting out a live product, and so we have to build, we have to have something that the community can play right now. But at the same time, we're planning for the future. And so if you think about shops as an example.
Oh, yeah, let's talk about shops. Let's address shops. That's a good idea, because they've been around since the 2.x, since Alpha 2.x. They have not evolved at all. They're still the same. We can't interact with the shopkeepers. We have to go through those annoying screens, right? So yeah, Tony, please tell us about shops.
All that a shop was going to do was basically offer a certain number of items for sale or a particular price. Then the effort that we've expended to get us to here, was dramatically over-engineered, and it's been that way for the last 2.5 years. And it's only now that you're starting to bring in quantum and have quantum start to dictate some of this information, these services, which then cache this information. And they're also responsible for basically receiving callbacks from the individual shops and then feeding, on occasion, some of those transactional events back to the mission instances that are running on some of these servers, that you start to see why we made some of the choices we did back then. And in other words, it's kind of like, before you can get around to building the skyscraper, you have to lay the foundation. And so we've said this so many times in the past.
Mm-hmm. Yes, they have, and that's why we have so many memes, on some specific Reddit subreddits, right? They've been saying that so many times, and there's been a lot of people, including myself, who have been very patient over years. Yeah, there'll be the foundations, and then after there's the and hopefully every year we're hoping, is this gonna be the year when we'll see that floating of content being added. I don't know. We'll keep. I'm here for the show, guys. I'm not a white knight, but I'm not at the same time a hater either. I'm always trying to remain as realistic as possible, and I think that with Star Citizen, the best approach to have is to just be here for it's a show. They're showing us how to make the best damn space sim ever. Hey, Amirographer, how are you doing? Yeah, Randy Stalkup says Genothreat is like a trainer for the live services team to roll out this new technology. It looks the same on the surface to us, but the data feeds into the rest of the economy. Perhaps as well. It's interesting that they mentioned how Quanta is going to affect, shop prices and commodities. I'm afraid that we are a long ways to go, but I cannot wait. It's very interesting that Tony Z here did say that there will be eventually, further down the line, a live demo, not a theory demo, but a live demo of how Quanta is going to work. This is going to be definitely something to. Who knows? Maybe this year for SeasonCon, if we have a SeasonCon, that would be maybe a highlight of any SeasonCon for sure.
And we're starting to get to the point now to where we're starting to exploit, some of these underlying pieces. I mean, Quantum's another perfect example in that regard, in that we have these so-called probability volumes that dictate what sort of stuff you can encounter in a given, area of space. And then we have shops, and we have service beacons, and we have all of these different systems. But right now, designers go in, even missions. What missions are available where, and for what amount of money, and what level of risk you're going to incur when you actually accept them. That's all fixed right now. The designers are able to set up these data structures, but what we haven't previously been able to do is provide the real-time dynamic inputs that would allow us to make these things ebb and flow. In other words, if there's currently a lot of pirates in an area, then having something delivered to that area should logically cost more. There's a greater risk to you and your ship, and and all that type of stuff.
It's not the case right now.
Designers haven't had the tools to be able to automatically feed that type of real-time information into these mission archetypes that they're setting up. And we're just now getting across a wide range of areas into doing some of that. And so there is an update that I'll be giving within roughly the next few months that will basically
soon, guys, soon.
what we've been working on insofar as not just quantum, but also some related, back-end technologies to help generate this, this algorithmic, this systemically derived, information, and then feed it into the game. And in a few cases, we've actually, we'll actually be able to demonstrate, real, actual working examples as opposed to, just being theory. I always hate to do too many, repeated theory talks, and so one of the things we debated doing this presentation a little bit earlier, but it still would have been in the vein of, it's coming. And so I intentionally wanted to hold it back a few extra months so that we could demonstrate some of this stuff live and actually show some of these pieces of tech and functionality coming to fruition.
I think that Colossus. I think that I'm also nodding my head at the same time. Grandpa says, "I love how Jared is not." And me too. I'm like listening. All right. I think that they are probably going to wait until iCache is there to show all of those dynamics, because they are going to need some kind of persistence in order for the data to persist and then respond to that data that then would have been recorded. So that's why I don't think that we are going to expect that live demonstration of Quanta anytime soon. It's in a couple of months, probably I would say by July or August, when the iCache will be there. But at least it's something that's planned. Let's hope that it's not going to take as long as the Squadron 42 video, for example, right? Or as long as as Theaters of War, which was supposed to come in a couple of weeks. We all remember that. So when it comes to dates, sorry, Tony, you're a fantastic man, but when it comes to dates, I would rather hear a soon TM than a couple of months. It's just my own thing. What do you guys think in the chat there as well? When do you think this live demo will come here? I wish Star Citizen had better time to kill. Personal shields or even health pool would be nice. Maybe make it a bit more like Deus Ex or Cyberpunk 2077 or VPTM, first person RPG. I have no idea what VPTM is, Randy Stolkup. What do you mean about the time to kill? You think that the time to kill is too long or too slow? I feel that when it comes to I don't like time to kills that are too long, personally. I didn't play. No, Andre, you didn't play Theaters of War, no.
I do want to add on top of that, just for the community, this update that Tony is talking about that will come. We're not going to say when. Let's be real. We don't have a great history of saying, "Hey, we're
going." At least he's a. See, that's exactly what we're talking about. He's acknowledging it, right?
We're gonna have this video out then, but we're working on it, and and from what I've already seen, it's pretty awesome. Tyler's in my chat right now, like, tell people it's awesome. It is awesome.
It's kind of like a release to where there are certain things you want to demonstrate, and there's always a little bit of uncertainty with respect to development schedules, and so it's difficult to say precisely, but we are already deep into testing multiple facets of what we're aiming to deliver, so it's coming.
Okay, well, that's good to know. That's good to know that they've been actively working on what we've seen a year and a half ago, that they're testing it, in their internal servers. And, what I want to know is the dynamic event that we're having now, Genothread, the very first step of that particular Quanta? Are there parts of Quanta here in that particular Victor Van Doom? That name seems familiar. Do you are you the real Victor Van Doom from Doomcock? That would be fun. Ships need longer time to kill, in my opinion. A lot of gameplay will be around fixing the components, etc. If you need a good amount of time for that. I like your name, Victor Van Doom. I like it. Intriguing. I'll check it out. I'll check it out. It turned into 6. What a mustache! Yes. Jared likes to change his appearance from time to time. Star Citizen is all about the ships and the crew who plays together. At least to me, says Colossus. The ship is very important as well. And without a good crew, if you have a hammerhead, if you have any ship that has a secondary position that needs to be filled, without a good crew, you are nothing. And that's also, I think, one of the main victories of Star Citizen versus Elite Dangerous, for example, where you can play Elite Dangerous solo all the way, even if you have one of the largest ships. Which is why, in my opinion, again, I think that Star Citizen is again more immersive and more entertaining, because the just playing together with other people at the same time is just gaming on a whole other level, and in terms of immersion, fun, the sense of achievement. It's one thing to achieve something playing solo, it's another thing to achieve something with other people too, because it's also harder, right? Victor Venom says, with Geno Threat, I felt the capital ships don't feel big enough. Yes, I had that feeling too, Victor Vendum as well. I was looking for some very slow-moving broadside action. I guess that will be 2 more Javelin. Yes, but at the same time, Victor Von Doom, at the same time, those ships are not that big. Take an Idris frigate, for example. An Idris frigate is basically as big as a Nebulon B frigate in Star Wars, if we're talking about Star Wars. Take a Javelin, for example. A Javelin is just 100 meters bigger than than an Idris. So these are ships that are not so big. We're not talking about Imperial Star Destroyer size here. That is going to be the Bengal. When the Bengal will be in, then I think that they are going to feel a little bit bigger. Now, the other reason why they don't feel so big is because our ships in Star Citizen are also going pretty fast. They are going very fast. So that also is another factor. If you try to fly next to an Idris, then they are going to feel much bigger. But as you try to get a little bit closer, one day I tried to land on an Idris actually, and I can tell you that when I actually landed on an Idris, when I landed on Idris with an arrow, it did feel big, but it's not something that you would do very often.
In our long history of saying, hey, we're going to have a special video out at this point talking about this thing. Our track record's not so good here. So just hang tight. All right. So right now on the PTU, there's a dynamic event, our first dynamic event called Xenothreat, that's currently being tested now. Without spoiling the event, we obviously don't want to break it down and be like, hey, phase 1 is this. We don't want to go into that much detail on it. But tell us what Xenothreat is, what we're hoping to accomplish.
Okay, good. A little bit. Again, this is Jared reminding us that not everybody here has been around for a long time, so that's more for new players, I guess. But maybe we'll learn something.
There were 2 primary things on our mind.
Please, someone buy a new microphone to Tony, please.
When thinking about this event, and we started discussing this internally probably almost a year ago, back in first quarter 2020, what we wanted to achieve, and the other thing that we wanted, besides it being fun, was that it wouldn't cause us to deviate too much from the natural trajectory of the development effort. In other words, it couldn't be too disruptive. We wanted to take the things that logically followed in terms of the development effort and look for ways that we could exploit and reveal these to players and basically improve the overall gameplay experience. And in certain cases, of course, a little bit more effort here, pushing something else back to free up some bandwidth so that we could polish something a little sooner than it would otherwise be the case. That always happens. And so one of the primary things that we wanted to do was get all of the mission and backend infrastructure operational. And this is it's for example, there's backend tools now, and I'll cover this in the upcoming presentation, to activate and monitor and deactivate missions. And that's, again, if you look at Xenothreat,
yeah, that's what they are doing right now. That's what they are doing with those playtests. We're having the PTU, but the mission is not activated right now. They are going to activate it in how long now? In 9 hours, right? If I'm correct. They're just gonna press that button and boom, it will be in.
The amount of work that's gone into allowing this event to basically be to be activated is far larger than what you're able to see right now. And what I mean by that is it exposes an entirely different way for designers to start to set these things up. They're able to, for example, within the, when they're crafting the mission archetype logic, they can now declare these, these static instanced variables that are managed by the back end. And they also have the concept of phases, which are conditionals that can be associated with these variables that are managed by the back end. And
so that's what we're having right now. Phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. I've only been able to experience phase 2 and phase 3, but I forgot what is phase 1, by the way. Can you guys tell me in the chat what is phase 1 in the genre? Because I think phase 2 is the cargo area, right? And then phase 3 is the battle that we've had over the past couple of days. So that's what Tony here is talking about here. With the reason why it's a dynamic event is because it's got those different phases that are basically triggered by either the players if they achieve certain conditions, or by the dev themselves, which is the reason why we were able to, for example, the last PTU was just phase 3, to just activate phase 3 and that's it.
The significance of this is that we can coordinate mission logic across all the different servers, and that's how Xenothreat fundamentally works, which is we have 4 phases in this mission. There's the initial, the introductory phase where we're kind of like, giving, we're hinting that, something's to come. We're doing some foreshadowing. There's the actual, javelin restocking, phase. Then there is, the climactic battle scene, and then there's the conclusion. And all of these, are really, they're representative. And what this event allowed us to do, most importantly, was to test and refine and get all this, stuff out and working in the real world. Like, so now you've actually got a dynamic mission service, and you actually have the concept of, these global variables, and the mission, and the designers are able to communicate with them through, through subsumption task archetypes, and we're able to do these conditional evaluations. We're able to basically have the backend synchronize however many servers we have to keep them all in lockstep. And then there's all sorts of, fine tuning that goes on to where, well, if you've got a particular server and it's in, say, phase 2, and they're restocking and they've got the javelin in port, and then and the designers can actually set it up to do things, and they are things like the number of javelins that are successfully restocked in phase 2 can then serve as an input to phase 3, such that the frequency of support you get from the UEE Navy depends upon how successful you were in defending those ships in that earlier phase. And again, it's what matters less is the specifics of what we're doing, right this moment with that.
See, that's very interesting. That is indeed something that I had no idea, that that we definitely did not see. So they're basically, and I've seen those UEE ships. I've been in various phases, and I did notice that the amount of ships that we were getting was not always the same. Sometimes we had more, sometimes we had less, and that is because of how successful players have been previous phase. That's very interesting.
And more what we're allowing the designers to do in the future, how we're basically unblocking them to to do lots more cool stuff. Another big focus for this particular event, a major one, was from the beginning we knew that we wanted to put a lot of emphasis, for the first time, on the capital ship battles.
Jacob. So Jacob says, I like the phase when the javelin just vanishes in thin air when the mission's over. That's a bug, Jacob. And I think that this has been fixed. Was it in the last patch notes, last 1 or 2 patch notes? It's because apparently it was going to quantum travel way too fast. And this normally, Jacob, should have been fixed.
So there were a litany of changes that we needed to make in order to enable this. And at the very top of the list was how the AI responded to the threat of torpedoes. So originally, and I say this was still true as of about 4 months ago when we finally got to the major push in that regard. Originally, neither turrets nor ships tasked with defending a capital ship paid them any heed. And that meant that it was way too easy to take these capital ships out in the early days. It was literally trivial. It was no fun at all. And so we spent over a month fine-tuning various systems so that countermeasures would be launched and worked as expected. Turrets would prioritize major incoming threats like a torpedo over most other things. Players would be rewarded for coordinating their attacks with one another. Like you tend to be much more successful if 3 players launch torpedoes at the same time. And we built in into the logic.
That's what they've been working on for Star Citizen 3.12, basically. All those torpedo, missiles improvements, AI improvements, all of that's been gearing up in order for Genothreat event to be in. That everything makes sense now. Everything makes sense. It's true. It's true. In the past, you were just launching torpedoes. Ships had no idea what to do. Now, try to launch a single torpedo to a capital ship. Chances it's not going to be. It's actually the opposite now. When your torpedo hit, you're like, yeah, there's a big explosion, there's a big boom, and you have that sense of achievement that you managed to get a torpedo that hits something, and it's definitely, he's right. It's definitely more fun that way. Yeah.
This sense to where it's not like it's
proper target selection.
Well, what we didn't want to do is make it too robotic, too precise. Not because you might not have that 1,000 years in the future, but simply because it's not fun. And so what we wanted to do, if it targets perfectly and if it's able to perfectly shift its attention, it simply didn't deliver the gameplay feeling that we wanted. And so again, we've spent weeks and weeks tweaking, fine-tuning this until we were internally pretty happy with the results. Another good example was the Idris. The Idris was originally pretty suicidal in that it would happily engage the Javelin and get destroyed as long as it managed to get off its railgun.
The railgun. Oh, the Idris Railgun. That's a big topic for another day. I got a story for you guys about the Idris Railgun. One day I was flying a Constellation. And the Idris is very rowdy. The Idris likes to fight. I think sometimes the Idris thinks it's a starfighter. One day I was flying a Constellation, fighting the Arlington Idris, and for some reason the Idris decided I was a major threat in my Constellation, and decided to chase me. So I tried to run away with my Constellation. I was at maximum speed. The Idris was chasing me at maximum speed as well, firing. I had to evade the railgun, firing the railgun back and forth. I could see the railgun shots going on each side of the Constellation every time it was firing. It was insane. So that Idris here likes to fight with its railgun, and it definitely needs some tweaks and changes of attitude.
And so its logic wound up evolving to the point where it's now much more opportunistic. It wants to use its railgun, but only when that doesn't put it in too much danger.
Like fighting a Constellation, I understand now. Okay, well, that makes sense. Maybe we want the Idris to still select its targets a little bit with more wisdom.
And then one other thing that we noticed was that the turret targeting couldn't be so Boolean. It couldn't focus 100% of its attention on an attacker that was only slightly more attractive than another player, because again, it looked artificial, and most importantly, it just wasn't very fun for the other players. We were getting internal reports of you have 8 turrets active on a ship, and you've got 16 players, and that when it was so Boolean, meant that at least half of the players we're not having any of that firepower focused on them, even for an instant. And so they
could do whatever they wanted, right?
They felt relatively bored in terms of the danger presented to them.
You want to be
yeah, exactly. You want to be shot by the Idris. Have you seen the Earth? It has no, I haven't seen that, Randy.
Shot at. If you're attacking, if you're jumping in the battle with an Idris and a Javelin, you want to be shot at. You want to feel like I'm a threat.
Yes, exactly, Jared. Spot on, Jared. Exactly. You want to feel like you're a threat. You want to feel like a little bit of danger, a little bit of adrenaline. And if the Idris or the big capital ship you're attacking doesn't give a damn about you, either it's because you can't harm it at all, which is how I felt when I was flying an Arrow. I was like, oh, my Arrow is not doing anything to that Idris at all, or it's going to be very easy to take it down. And both situations are annoying.
Yeah, and so there's a lot more fuzziness and grain, and it took time to basically work through all these details. I mean, we sat through every single week reviewing what how it looked when you basically fired individual torpedoes at a ship. How it looked when you fired multiple torpedoes. How it looked if you fired multiple torpedoes with a very small differential in time versus a large differential in time. How the ship responded when it still had countermeasures available. And then another aspect of this was the support ships that basically defend these capital ships. It's the same thing, to where even if you're firing upon them, if a torpedo is launched at the capital ship, they'll see that as a greater threat, break off, potentially at risk to themselves, and prioritize dealing with that torpedo.
Oh, that's super cool. I haven't seen that yet in the verse, but that would definitely make sense. And but are they capable of? I haven't seen that. Have you guys seen that right now? Have you? Because there's been quite a lot of escorts, not necessarily with the Arlington. I think the Arlington Idris only has 6 escort ships, but in the Juno thread there are lots and lots and lots of escort ships. Have you seen that? Have you seen them breaking off and following missiles or especially torpedoes? Let me know in the chat down there too.
And so there's a multitude of these things that had to be worked through, and there's of course there's more we could do, there's more we will do. It's by no means perfect, but it's light years. I mean, I hesitate to say it's light years beyond where we were when this started, because some of this stuff hadn't even realistically gotten off the ground, and now it's actually in some of these select areas it's actually quite mature.
You mentioned a couple things I want to follow up on. First off, the process of bringing capital ship battles to life and all the balance decisions and all the new technologies that were required to bring up. That's actually the topic of next week's ISC. So,
good. Oh, that's going to be it. That's great. That's great. So the next Inside Star Citizen will be about capital ships in the verse. Okay, hey, maybe it is going to coincide with the release of Star Citizen 3.12.1, right? But the one thing that indeed, as an original bagger, been a bagger here since 2012, yes, since 2012, the way when I play the PTU and when I play the Geno thread, even it felt like a completely different game. And I've put that reaction video on my channel where I was like, oh my gosh. people were writing oh my gosh in the comments as well. That's just how I felt. I was like, and that particular reaction video when I was playing Star Citizen 3.12, that battle, the capital ship battle, that was really how I felt for the first time, and I had not experienced anything like that in Star Citizen before. And I just hope it's just because the frames were bad. I got also a couple of comments here. Some people were even thinking my computer was bad, but it's not my computer. It's just because there were so many entities around, right? It can only get better. I mean, I don't think it's gonna get any worse because they're going to figure out, how to tweak that particular event, either server-wise or bring in more or less assets and eventually, it is going to get more and more mature. But it totally felt so much different than any of the script missions that we have right now, which is you have a 1 or 2 enemy ships and you have to take them down at a time. It's Star Citizen on a whole other level.
We got a lot there. Yeah, some of it you just heard from Tony, but we'll dive into more detail in next week's ISC. I wanted to talk to you about other things you touched on. You mentioned some shared information between servers. Mm-hmm. And that's something relatively new. That's a new aspect.
It's totally. This is literally the first demonstration of this tech. There's more to come. Like another thing we're working on the back inside is like right now we have the ability to, when the designers craft this mission logic, all of that logic previously, all the data was basically stored on the server. So if you have 200 servers, you had 200 different instances. And so what you're now seeing is like the first example of us allowing the designers to split it into, it's kind of like a client server architecture, but for mission logic, to where they can dictate this logic runs on the individual server instance and it's got its own local variables, and it can interface with variables and it can interface with functions that are also executed on the back end. And so what this allows us to do is, like I was saying earlier, it's like you can have an individual mission instance of this Xenothreat on a given server, and you can register that you did or did not successfully defend this javelin. Did you sufficiently restock it and it left and you were victorious, or did it suffer so much damage that it had to run away? And so we actually tally the number of successful restockings, and then, like I said earlier, that directly impacts how quickly that javelin is going to come support you, assuming you need it in those later stages. And again, the important point there is it's representative. What we've done now is work out the details of the tech, put it into wide operations. You can kind of think of Xenothreat as the first use case, and it focused our efforts to get all of this stuff working. And there is a lot more that you'll be seeing in both the near and farther term.
I wish that they could be telling us also about future dynamic events. They're not going to tell us, right? I don't think so. How is this going to affect, the next dynamic events? Where do we go to once the Xenothreat is out, right? They're not telling us yet, but I wish that he could give us a little. I'm sure they have plans, right, for the next dynamic events that are coming up in 2, 3, 4, 5 months, but how are it's just the very first iteration of servers working together to bring in some information. That's great, but where do we go from there?
Dynamic events are something that there's going to be continual focus on for the foreseeable future.
Okay.
For example, the next Fleet Week is actually going to be running off of these same fundamental principles. We've got another dynamic event which.
Okay, so we can expect Fleet Week. Fleet Week is going to be the next one after Xenothreat, which makes sense. I mean, Fleet Week is in May, right? If I remember correctly. So then February is going to be Xenothreat. Then after March, April, and then they're probably going to be testing that event in April, and then boom, May it comes up in live. So got the next 3 months with Xenothreat. Okay, so it's not coming actually pretty soon.
We're referring to as Ninetales Lockdown, and it.
Ninetales Lockdown. Yes. Are they going to destroy? Because yes, people say, are we going to lose? How are we going to lose Port Orisar? How is Port Orisar going to be? Look at Jared here. Jared's like, yeah, maybe that's it. Is that Ninetales Lockdown going to be the doom of Port Orisar?
Introduces you. It's not live yet, but we're already well into testing. The so-called shop modifiers. We can now have mission logic affect at a global scale, and we've resolved all of the coordination between the different servers and issues like that. So you can now apply shop modifiers. You can apply probability volume modifiers. You can basically lock down areas of space, inhibit quantum travel within them. What will be coming in the not too distant future will be things like, population control, control of the actual spawn managers, things of that sort.
So that's coming up. By the way, for those of you who don't know that, this is coming up with a spawn closet. Where is it coming in the roadmap spawn? Is it 3.15, I think, right? So that's these particular spawn closets are what is going to be controlling the populations. Yes. Let me check at the same times. Take a shot every time he says, Mark. Randy says, is Ninetale Lockdown the code word for some sort of attack or festive get together? No, the Ninetales, Randy, is the criminal organization that is in the Yela asteroid. So the Ninetales control Grimex, for example. So it's possible that either the Ninetales are going to have some kind of event around Crusader, or maybe Crusader Security is going to be taking care of them. I don't know how it's going to be, but it's going to be interesting. And people are speculating that at some point Port Orisar is going to have to go. A couple of months, that is going to be coincided with the release of Horizon. And Horizon is obviously going to have its own rest stop, which is not supposed to be Port Orisar, so they're going to get rid of it as well. William Guy Tilgan Jr. says, I understand why we want to have events, but every one we do causes some players not to be able to play as they would normally, let it alone partake in the event, because of the number of other players. Well, these events are multiplayer events, William, so that's why. I think that's, of course, another topic for another day, but I think that when you're taking part of those events, it's very important to be coordinated with other players. Do not go out there alone. Be there with a group and be prepared with the right types of ship, the right type of equipment, because anything can happen.
Access to areas. And you think about this, like, what is Fleet Week other than at a certain time we're going to go ahead and open the doors to a certain area and allow you entrance. And in the case of some of these upcoming events, when those events are active, we want to basically, we've decided as designers that it would be fun if we're doing a Fleet Week event, then we want to increase the demand for party favors and alcohol and fireworks, or whatever other types of commodities temporarily at this location. And so for the duration of this event, we crank up the demand, the price goes higher, we broadcast that information to players, let them know, hey, by the way, the prices in this particular area for these particular commodities are getting out of whack. You might want to take advantage of this temporary opportunity and focus on that. And
that's very interesting. So so some of these commodities are going to get price changes. Do you mean, Tony Zurovek, do you mean that we are going to buy distilled spirits at some of the farms and buy that at area and sell that at area 18 for a limited amount of time and make extra profit? Why not? Oh, spawn closets coming in 3.13, Zlotan. All right, that's actually coming much closer than I thought. Zlotan, thank you. Thank you for the clarification.
And so all of this is completely new functionality. It's basically you're adding additional paints to what the designers can use to craft these portraits that they're making.
So yes, you now know what the next dynamic event is.
Yeah, the next dynamic event is Fleet Week and then Ninetales, right? So there's going to be Fleet Week. Fleet Week is in May. And then Ninetales Lockdown. Right after Fleet Week. Fleet Week is in May. By the end of June, maybe early July, is when Crusader will be up. And that could be when we are going to have the Ninetales Lockdown, which would make sense since we are going to get rid of Port Orisar eventually. And, Jerry's like, oh no, please don't tell us. Come on, Jerry. We know they're going to destroy Port Orisar, right? So there we have it, guys. There we have it. Fleet Week. So Xenothreat, Fleet Week, and Ninetales.
Well, there's going to be. We're just going to be keep rolling them out. We've actually we've probably got 8 or 10 specific ones planned, and like I said, each one is looking to leverage stuff that's come before and then add some new functionality.
There's so much Jared wants to tell us. Jared knows. He's like, guys, you have no idea how cool that is, but I cannot say it.
We talked a bit about how with the dynamic events, it now allows cross-server progress and stuff like that. The events on one server get tallied up with the events of another server to affect the next phase. You've got the Ninetales Lockdown where we can now dynamically affect the price of shops and stuff like this. One of the things you touched on, and again I just want to follow up on something you said: no deviation from the existing development. How important?
Just to be clear, it's not that there's no deviation. It's that you're trying. Basically, we have a long-term plan of things we want to get done, and it logically makes sense to do this before this other piece of tech, etc. And so you don't, in general, want to deviate too dramatically purely for the sake of an arbitrary event. In other words, if not for Xenothreat, we could have done something else that would also be interesting. Yeah. But it was time in the natural course of things. We needed to basically start getting the back end coordination of these events. We needed to get that operational. We needed to bring the capital ships online. The torpedo stuff is something that's been that's something that's been bothering us for a long time. So all of those things now. Some of those bits of tech, when we started last year, they weren't going to be addressed for another 6 months, and so we did reprioritize some things. So what I was saying earlier is you don't want to completely upend your logical development schedule, but you certainly refine it, you tweak it, you basically massage things around based upon. So you're kind of like looking for.
So basically, what he's saying is that those dynamic events are perfect opportunities to polish some of the technologies that they've been working on for quite some time and putting them together into an event for players to try.
Intersection of what's within your grasp, if not absolutely all going to be there unless you actually put some focus on it. And then once we kind of lock that down, it becomes a very good means of focusing focusing everyone's attention to where we know exactly how we're going to be using everything from capital ship combat to the shop transactions that we can now have fed back into the mission logic to a vast multitude of other things.
Right. Now you hit exactly what I wanted you to hit there, that these things don't detract or derail from the development. They actually focused in and bear down on things that we already intended to do. They just bring them into a more crystalline focus for a bit.
And there's also a possibility that June 3rd was supposed to come a little bit earlier as well. If you remember, we've been hearing those June 3rd for how long? I think it was like June 2020, right? So quite some time, those cryptic messages in the verse, and it's only, so many months after that we are getting to experience, almost 9 months after that we're finally going to experience that. So there's probably been some delays as well. Randy Stalker says, they said last week that there will be no nudity. How will bathrooms work? How are they in the game? Like The Sims, fade to black behind closed doors only? I don't know, Randy. It's not today's topic, I think.
That said, there had to be some concerns. There had to be some dangers inherent. What were some of the things we needed to look out for while we were working? What scared us about this?
The biggest concern from the beginning, I would say,
hey Colin,
was going to be performance. We knew performance was going to be an issue.
Glad they are addressing performance. Performance is indeed an issue. I have been as low as about 10 frames per second at some of the busiest areas. People have been saying in the comments, Irad, you need to buy a new computer because it's so bad. It's not my fault. It's back-end performance here. There are so many different ships, so many turrets, so many explosions happening at the same time. And if the more players there are, the worse it gets. So that's the one thing, in my opinion, that's the one thing that is going to improve the most over the next couple of dynamic events, is how to make those events more fluid without necessarily removing some component. Randy said, what happened to interactive copies? They are already interactive, Randy. I don't know what you're talking about, man. You can already press the different buttons.
It continues to be an issue. We've got a number of initiatives underway to basically improve that. And then we're also attacking it, from a completely different angle, which is not just the per server performance, but the whole server meshing initiative is intended to eventually allow us to distribute the workload over as many servers as we need. And so that was always something that we were aware of. We've basically tweaked and refined things. We, the maximum number of enemies you face. In other words, do you face 50 enemies at once, or do you basically face, a dozen, and we keep replenishing them as you destroy them or take them out, make them flee, basically replenish them, quicker.
Which is what's happening right now. They can't bring in 50 NPCs at the same time. Can you imagine 50 NPCs at the same time? Well, technically, I think that as soon as when we're going to have server meshing, technically it is going to be possible, right? Because you're going to have also, hundreds of players this time inside the same, instance. So you need to keep all of those players busy, right? But at the same time, when you just 12 NPCs plus the cap ships, that already has quite a big toll.
How many capital ships can we put at a time? There's been a tremendous amount of focus on optimizing everything from turret AI to even seemingly unrelated things like social AI. It's like any time you're saving there is basically additional time that you can inject into, into these events that are intended to basically draw lots of players together and have and have an enormous amount of AI active. If you think about it, I mean, this is definitely the biggest such event we've done to date, and we're putting more players and more AI, and you got tons of turrets operation. I mean, you have a lot of stuff happening in one area, and so it's like with most things, right? Which is your first iteration of these things is never as mature as you would like in terms of the performance, and we're going to keep refining it. I think you'll see some big improvements over the course of the next few quarters, and we'll go from there.
That's what we've been talking about. Yeah, first iteration. It's something that guys, keep your expectations low. People have been saying, "Oh, the frames are so bad." Oh, the game. Yeah, they've never done that before. The technology is just starting to get into fruition, which is why, I'm not going to cry about the performance here on this channel. I know, I expect the performance to go down, to go to 15, 10 frames per second. That's how it's going to be with that particular event, and then we are going to see how they're going to. That's how it was as well with the landing zones, guys. Remember Levski? Remember how bad it was at the beginning, and then how it improved, when we were getting those landing zones, getting more fluid, better frames, patch after patch after patch. That's how it's going to be with those events as well. So we're going to have to get a little bit of patience there.
All right, so we're about halfway through. We are talking with Tony Zurovek, big head honcho guy for the Persistent Universe and Systemic Systems. Remember, if you're watching live on Twitch right now, you can submit questions with the word "question" in capital letters.
Yeah, Parker.
Brackets. That's going to help.
That's right.
Tyler
Lots
and
of
our
cool
community
stuff this year.
management team pull those out from the conversations. Remember to try to keep the questions related to the stuff we're talking about today. So if you're asking about when your favorite
there
ship's
will
gonna
only
come
be
out or
more to
something,
leverage.
that's
It's true.
not really
It's
the
true,
stuff
Parker.
we
Nice to
take
see you
from
today,
the
Parker, by the way. How are you, Parker?
Tony, you mentioned that designers get that designers can use dynamic events for all manner of things. We just showed on ISC how the terrain modification tool will make things easier for designers to craft and alter the surface of planets and stuff. Dynamic events isn't just a feature for players; it's also a tool for our developers and our designers. What are some of the ways that dynamic events can help our designers make better and more dynamic stuff for Star Citizen?
Oh, that's going to be an interesting question here, talking about dynamic creation. Let's have a look at the chat here. Yeah, Randy remembers here the 10, 15 FPS Levski days. Yeah, these were not so good times, actually. These were not good old times, right? But they were emotional times because we were getting there. Eagle 6-year stuff. How are you doing? Crazy thought that could always not do events until the underlying tech is ready. Yeah, right? Exactly. The verse chewed you up a little bit. I see. Well, that's why I'm not in the verse right now. Normally I would do a live stream in the verse. I'm not doing the verse today. Seems like the tech is mostly, the tech is getting ready indeed. What's my accent? Colin says it's the tired accent, Colin. Normally that is not the accent that I have. But I'm exhausted. I'm having an exhausting week. Next week will be exhausting as well, just like it's all going to be until Chinese New Year, which is why also the video qualities has been dropping dramatically because I barely have time to make content for the channel, and it's not quality content. I'm sorry about this, guys. And as soon as Chinese New Year is over, it will get back to normal.
Well, it's like I was saying earlier. What dynamic events really are is what we set up by default is what I would call like the systemic background, right? That's what quantum is good at, which is it's like the real world economy. Things ebb and things flow, but in general, you don't have major financial crises or Great Depressions or wars, on a regular basis. But the reality, from a gameplay perspective, is you actually want a little bit of chaos here and there, and sometimes we, the designers, want to go in and specifically massage it. It's like, oh, you know what? This area of the solar system has been kind of boring today. We're going to liven it up. And so what these dynamic events allow us to do is basically to seamlessly integrate a chunk of designer and writer driven content into this background simulations, so that how it interfaces with the the world as it as it currently exists, it's all logical. It's exactly what you're saying. In other words, for example, if we introduce a horde of pirates at a particular location, well, those pirates, they're going to need fuel, they're going to need ammo, they're going to need ship repairs. All of a sudden, you would expect to basically see lots more missions for escorts of transport ships in that area.
So he's basically saying the
more
same stuff
bounties,
he's been saying since
bounty
Season
service
Con
being
here.
dispatched to
Nothing
that
new.
area. So you have all of these other logical knock-on effects you would like, and those they get for free. But you think about it, it's like in Xenothreat, there's all of this custom dialogue and stuff geared towards this, and you got to go record the specific lines and and trigger them up. So it's basically what I would describe as the best of both worlds, which is it's a big open world, and you can do whatever you want and make whatever choices you want, and the game will respond logically. And if you're particularly clever, you'll occasionally ferret out some cool opportunities. And then at the same time, whether we manually do it or whether on occasion Quantum decides, there's been so much battling in this area that we're going to go ahead and activate a compatible dynamic event that says, and so the way.
Whoa, 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 whoa. Did he say that in the future, Quanta is going to be able to trigger those dynamic events by itself? I mean, how cool would that be, right? Tony Z Hive, I think I'm developing an immunity. Oh no, Eagle 6 already? You're not sensible to the Tony Z Hive anymore. Sounds like Jumptown may be coming back via the Ninetale events. Looking forward to what they have plans. Perhaps, Parker, I think that's when they are going to destroy Polarisar. Stop the record, says Randy Stark. What do you mean stop the record? What are you talking about? Most YouTubers leave this time because revenue is low. Yeah, but it's 7 p.m. for me, Colin here. I live in Far East Asia, so that's why I don't have any other time. I don't care about the revenue. If I was doing this for the money, I'll be doing something else, Colin. I'm doing it for just the chill and the thrill and just being with you guys. That's what I like. That's what I like. Very exciting here. They'll be able to make adjustments, but they'll also be able to let Quanta do those events on their own. That's fantastic. And all they have to do, if they have an event like those, just as they said, just record some lines to make it feel a little bit more special. And in the future, just like, it's much easier for them to create planets, build outposts. I think in the future, it's also going to be much easier for them to just, pop up one of those events at one particular place of the verse, and boom, that's going to be it, right?
These things are configured is, you can think of it a bit like a programming function, to where they've got certain requirements, certain inputs that have to be fed to them. And so what the system is basically looking for is, at any given time, is for the inputs in any given area, what kind of content does it have that it can match up? And so I mentioned like dynamic events, but there's a middle layer to this, which is, so heretofore today, you've had the normal, what I'd call the static missions, and then at the far end of the spectrum, you've got these dynamic events, and in between, you actually got what I've always referred to as dynamic missions. And
like maybe the combat beacons, perhaps.
They kind of split the difference to where they're going to be systemically generated all over the place. You constantly see them. They'll look very much like, right now, if you're in an area and there's a high probability of pirates, we actually create a pirate encounter mission, or we create a cargo transport ship mission, a conflict, or whatever the case may be.
We've seen that. We've seen that. It does happen from time to time. It's still now. It's quite rare. But sometimes you are getting indeed, out of the blue, you are getting jumped out of Quantum Drive, and boom, there's a caterpillar being attacked. And then what are you gonna do? Do you interfere, or do you just go away? It's happening. It's rare, but it has happened to me a few times.
Missions do is basically allow us at a smaller, more localized scale. Now we're not talking about trying to coordinate this across multiple servers or anything like that. It's just that.
Oh my gosh, Dr. Collins, thank you so much, man. Thank you so much for the donation. That's so cool, man. Thank you so much.
You run into in this area of space, what type of cargo should it have? Should it be copper? Should it be platinum? Should it be aluminum? It probably depends. Logically, it would depend upon, well, Is it coming from,
Randy, you're awesome, man. I love your comments. Randy's. So I was asking, when you get intercepted by by those pirates, what do you do? Do you interfere? Do you help? Do you help the cat? Do you do nothing? And Randy is asking, you ram the cat? Of course you ram the cat, Randy. Of course.
From an area, where it purchased those things, where that stuff is mined, refined, et cetera, and where is it going to? And so if it's heading one direction, if the cargo transport is going from the refinery to the factory, then you would expect that it's going to be loaded with goods that the refinery produces. And if the cargo ship is headed towards the refinery, then it likely has raw ore that needs to be.
Oh, that's so cool. That's so cool. So they actually also going to well, that makes sense, because that's going to be the whole objective, right? But they are going, maybe they're talking about parrots, the eventual opportunities for parrots, or since we're talking about parrots, right? Going in and out of refineries, different areas of productions here. Cargo ships coming in, having specific types of good, and then coming up with other types of good, of course.
Process, et cetera. And so the point being, designers don't need to, with the dynamic mission system, they don't need to fill in things like, hey, for this cargo transport mission, what kind of cargo, does it have? Should it be beat up, or should it be in pristine condition? Should it have fighter escorts, or should it just be traveling solo? Should it basically be a derelict husk in space that you stumble upon, or should it basically
all of that will be managed by Quanta,
in perfectly fine, pristine, condition? So these all become inputs to these setups. So the designers set up the archetypes, and the system fills in the inputs. And what you wind up getting is, an exponential increase in variety, because all of a sudden designers aren't trying to hard code every single specific instance. And so you can think of dynamic events as it's really just an evolution of that system that adds on some additional back end coordination and those modifiers that I talked about earlier, to where dynamic events really they grant the designer the temporary capability to nudge certain things in the simulation a particular way, whether it be new items added to a shop's inventory, whether it be additional demand for an item at a particular shop, whether it be missions that are going to be offered here, all of those sorts of things. And so I mentioned, like, population control. You can see, a fleet week in the future will be a dynamic event. And when that event's going on, we're going to turn the dial and crank up the population. We're going to wind up doubling it, because.
Oh my goodness. That's why we're going to have those NPCs outlets. Of course, for those future events, they are going to all pop up from that particular area. Since we're not going to have, let's be real, guys, these NPCs are going to be in space. They're not going to be ground-based NPCs, right? But they're still going to be like those particular spawning points that players, of course, will not be able to know where those are exactly from, where all those NPCs are going to come in for that particular event as reinforcements, perhaps, or response to what is happening in the future. Yeah, all right, okay, and I think that the more tech we're getting, of course, and the more interesting, the more complex those dynamics events are going to be, and at the same time, the less dev input they are going to have to require, because let's be real here again. This Juno threat event is pretty much handcrafted from A to B. The only thing that they are sharing here is some of the server data, which is the first time apparently that they are doing that. But as we are going to get more and more of those events, more of those tests that are coming up as soon as 3.13 actually are going to help there and bring in some of that extra complexity.
You'd expect to see a lot of people coming to see that show, and then when the event dissipates, then we'll basically turn that dial back down. The population will recede back to its normal levels. In other words, it's a special event that we've come in. We've added a ton of custom content, NPC conversations, all this stuff geared towards that, and so we kind of view it as one big comprehensive designer-driven package that can be merged with all of this, this back-end systemic, background.
Awesome.
I'm sorry, I got distracted. There was a ASCII art of Tyler wearing a American top hat thing. It was weird. You mentioned that there's the systemic triggers, the things that that can trigger all these things by just meeting criteria, and then the manual triggers. Some of the folks in the chat are asking if the manual triggers are akin to like the old GM events that you would see in older MMOs, where a design, in this case a designer as opposed to a GM, can come in and just create a one-time event.
Oh, game master.
That's exactly it. And some of these will be one time, like the Zenith Threader or a particular Fleet Week or other ones will basically just add to our library of things, that we can activate simply because we want it to liven up the place. The Nine Tails, I don't want to go into
So very interesting. So that confirms it. That confirms. So the Zenith Threat event is indeed like that one-time event that is happening at that particular time in 2951, right? In 2951, and it's never going to happen again. While their idea, apparently, if I understand correctly, and please correct me if I'm wrong, of course, guys, the idea is to bring in those events to be dynamically implemented in the verse, dynamically happening, and then you would see them in your mobiGlas or whatever type of device we'll have to take missions from in the future, and say, hey, there's maybe a in the priority tab, right? Hey, there's X amount of attacks that sector here, and we need as much help as possible without the devs having to do it. It's just like when the missions are popping up, you get, SPK mission coming up right now. The devs did not press the button and say that SPK mission is going to come up there, right? It's just automatic, and that's going to be the same there as well in the future. Okay, with those events, so cool.
Nine Tails, I don't want to go into like the detail because there's some cool stuff that we'll be introducing that players haven't that they haven't really seen before. So I want to kind of keep some of it under wraps.
No idea, Randy.
But it's very representative of some of the bits of functionality that we're introducing in there will then be exploited in more dramatic fashion in subsequent dynamic events. Like one high level example would simply be the Nine Tail stuff is kind of geared towards a certain area, basically being locked down as a result of aggression.
A certain area being locked down. Is it going to be Port Olisar? Is it going to be Yela? Is it going to be Crusader? Come on, we know. We can tell, right? You guys also think that they are going to destroy Port Olisar? Until recent evidence, no, they're not. But this one here, Nine Tail lockdown, that's gonna be it, guys. You will see. I would think as the new studio gets going, the new star map and stuff will get more clear. Perhaps. I don't think the new studio will take care of the star map, but the star map, the thing with the star map, maybe I should make a video about it. You guys tell me if I should make a video about it. But the star map needs to be converted to building blocks. They're not using building blocks for the star map, so that's the thing. It's an old Flash designed UI, and they need to be using the new tech that Star Citizen has now at its disposal to improve it, basically. So it's going to take some time.
And in the future, what we're going to wind up having is, if the player community doesn't beat back that particular threat, then it will grow, and all of a sudden you've got 2 or 3 or 4 different areas locked down. In other words, you the player community, have to respond and tamp out this fire, or else it will gradually grow. Now, it's possible.
Now, that sounds very interesting, but I have a question here, Tony. It's too bad we're not doing this live, right? What if the community continuously fails to prevent the lockdown from happening? Or even worse, what if the community sides with the Nine Tails? What if the community says, hey, Nine Tails, I hate the UEE, I hate this, I love you, Nine Tails. We don't have, especially since we're going to have the reputation system at the same time, right? What's happening there? Do we bring... Is the UEE coming into to help for the rescue, or are the Nine Tails going to control more areas? A little bit like, for example, is happening in Elite Dangerous. For example, when you in Elite Dangerous, you have those different factions in some specific star systems are at war, and then they control the stations. Is it going to be the same? That could be interesting too.
Of course, depending upon how we set it up and what the current inputs, it's like the NPC population in some cases may eventually respond sufficiently to do it. But you get the overall effect, which is this one event that's geared towards locking down an area. The area to be locked down is an input, and we can feed it 1, we can feed it 3, we can basically add a little bit of back-end logic controls, and then which ones are locked down can be replicated across all of the servers. So the community as a whole is fighting just like they are in Xenothreat against this common threat.
Oh, Colin. Oh. Colin says, I hate the current event because it's buggy. I want wars in this game to be similar to PlanetSide 2. It is going to come one day, Colin. Just give it some time. Let's remember, guys, Star Citizen is not a finished product. It is unfortunately far from being a finished product. It is. I hate to say that. I hate saying it. I hate when people tell me, but it's an alpha. Still, after 8 years, it's soon 9 years, right? It still is an alpha, and it is going to be buggy and we have to understand that it's going to be buggy, still going to be buggy for years and years and years to come. Is it less buggy than before? Oh, well, yeah, Colin, how long have you been with us, Colin? Please let me know in the chat then. How long have you been with us? Because 2 years ago, it was far worse. 2 years ago, you were going inside ships would kill you. 2 years ago, ladders would kill you 2 years ago, Colin, just leaving your ship to go to, let's say, for example, you would trade, leaving your freelancer or leaving your cutlass, your caterpillar to go to the outpost and buy some commodities would kill you. That's how it was. So yeah, it's buggy, but it's much less buggy than how it was.
Gotcha. So that I'm just going to do this for clarity's sake. A lot of the folks have been asking whether Xenothreat specifically is a one-time event.
Oh, Colin, you missed the worst parts then.
Whether it may come back. I know from internal conversations we're reserving our options there, whether Xenothreat's going to be a one-time thing or it's going to come back. But we have the option, though. That's the important part for this conversation, is that we can do these one-time limited events that occur in Star Citizen's history, and when they're done, they never return ever again. Or we can do ones that are recurring, or we can do ones that build upon each one, where it's like this is a one-time thing, but it leads into another event X number of months later.
Seasons, for example, that could lead to seasons, yes. And yeah, the Xenothreat even could be happening more times over and over again. Absolutely. Remember, Xenothreat is the faction that apparently controls Rune Station in Paro, so it could very well be coming in here in the future, right? I totally bought into traveling to the moons of Delamar. Yes.
Leads into another event X number of months later, and that's how we start adding a persistent and long-form storyline to the persistent universe.
Yeah, this one, the Xenothreat is basically, attacking, harassing the UE, and you're there to basically help, beat back, some of the specific challenges to basically salvage material, to restock the Javelin, defend transport ships, to the same effect, all this type of stuff. In the future, there may very well be ones where you actually have to go into, occupied space, so it's really dangerous to get there, infiltrate bases, retrieve stuff, bring it back, and then what we'd be measuring is well, how much total information or assets.
Are we talking about space, about info? See, Colin, that's what you were talking about. We are going to have those ground-based events. That's exactly what Tony Z is talking about here. Infiltrating bases, retrieving stuff, and leaving. It is going to come, Colin. It is going to come, but first they need to have that very first event to test it out, see what they can learn from that, and then build upon that as well. As a long-time backer, Colin, I've been here since 2012, Colin. I've been here since 2012. To me, as a long-time backer, this is already what I've experienced in the PDU, is what I've always wanted to experience, large-scale battle, capital ship versus capital ships, lots of NPCs and players around playing together. That's why. Please check out my. If you haven't check it out. My video about my first live reaction of the capital ship. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's how I was, That's how I felt, and that is just, guys, that is just the beginning. That is just expect more, you know, expect to have expect to have more oh my gosh moments in the future. Yeah, 2012. What was I backing? I was backing a Constellation JPEG, Adrian. That's what I was backing. Yeah.
Stolen ships that you've retrieved, etc. How many have, you know, has the community pulled back? And again, I keep referring to like the community because in general these dynamic events are meant to be things that apply across the entire spectrum of servers and not isolated onto a, you know, just one individual instance. If you're talking about just an individual server instance, then you're really talking more of, you know, like I was saying earlier, with like the dynamic missions, to where if it's all on one server, then you don't need all this back-end coordination and variable maintenance and, you know, phases and all that. You can literally just run it with your normal, you know, subsumption mission logic.
Just looking at some of the questions from the live chat here. Some of these we've touched on, but we'll go ahead and ask them just for clarity's sake. As far as the size of dynamic events, are they limited in scope until Quanta is fully on board and up and running, or will they always just be some of them smaller, some of them massive? Is there a scale you have in mind?
But it's actually exactly it's both. It's like some of them will be really large, like Xenothreat, and it puts the whole, you know, solar system, theoretically under threat. Others will be much more localized. That is like our first test, like for this Nine Tails lockdown. It's much more localized. It's a threat to a specific landing zone. So if you
a specific landing zone that is coming up in 3.14, and that there is a moon not far that has an asteroid base, which is where it's coming from.
You have no interest in that particular landing zone, and the shops that have been cut off, you know, from the world and aren't able to get the supplies that they need, and therefore they're all calling out for help, and the price is going through the roof, what they'd pay to get medical supplies and all this other stuff. Then you can largely ignore it. And so the idea is, again, it's like we're building a library, and we'll have, you know, big, you know, invasion, fleet invasions, you know, of a solar system, smaller things, which is, you know, just a particular, you know, pirate gang assaulting a particular landing zone. We'll have, you know, infiltration stuff. It's really, again, it's like you're aiming to get the tools to allow the designers to basically express solutions to all of these, you know, dramatically different scenarios.
Interesting what they said, by the way. They're starting big with Xenothreats, but some of the other events will be much smaller. Which is, again, I think it's a good approach, you know, starting with something on the large scale, and then how to make it more exciting, more dynamic, and more fluid with better frames and better performance on a smaller scale, like the Ninetale events. We'll see how it goes.
Now, we've mentioned Quantum and Quanta whatnot several times during the show.
Adrian, I'll be frank with you. I knew his games, Wing Commander, Starlancer, Freelancer, but I had no idea who Chris Roberts was before Star Season 2, Adrian.
Folks who have been watching, I'm looking at the chat here, that don't know what we're talking about, there is a nice hour-long presentation available on our YouTube page from CitizenCon 2949, where Tony introduced the entire concept of Quanta. We don't want to waste our remaining minutes here just regurgitating what's already been shared. That said, it has been more than a year since we've heard about it, since we've heard from you. I know we have that presentation coming in the next X number of months. Without spoiling that, can you give us a bit of an update on how things have been progressing, whether you're happy with where we're at right now?
Oh, presentation coming soon, right? Presentation coming soon. And it says, I got into space flight with games like X-Wing and didn't play. Yeah, same, Adrian. My first simulation was X-Wing versus TIE Fighter. I played X-Wing Alliance for a long time. I still have X-Wing Alliance installed on my computer right now, in fact. Eagle 6 Air says, what frustrates me the most is the idea that prices are artificial. And if players are blocking a station, actually really would be restocking and racing. Yeah, but Eagle Air says, again, prices are artificial right now because they don't have the means to make them fluctuate between players. Because of players' activity, the tech is just not there yet. In the future, when we're going to have iCache and server meshing and Quanta, the prices will no longer be artificial anymore. And I get a frustration, Eagles. I don't know if you remember last year. Last year, I had my own dynamic event. In fact, that is true, guys. Last year, I created my own little mini dynamic event on Aerial. I hired the Matadors. I paid the Matadors overall. I spent 2 million Alpha UEC. Back in those days, in Alpha 3.6, I think that was in 3.6. Back in the Alpha 3.6, 3.7, 2 million Alpha UEC was a big deal because they didn't have the exploit where you could get billions of Alpha UEC. So I paid them 2 million Alpha UEC to completely blockade the moon of Aerial. And nobody could trade. I was the only one. I was the only one who could go to Aerial and buy all the juicy Laranite. And everybody else who were trying to go to Aerial were blocked. And my experiment, I didn't do that just to kill people and disrupt people. I wanted to see if this would affect the prices, because the prices were so high. They're like right now you go to Aerial, you want to be buying that Laranite right now. It's impossible. It's just so high. It's out of stock. That's how it was already back in 3.6, 3.7. So I thought, hey, if I hire an org to blockade those trade posts, is it going to get more supplies? Is it going to affect those prices? Let me tell you, do you know what happened? The prices dropped by 0.1. So yeah, that's what happened, Eagle. So yeah, that frustrates me too. And I'm really looking forward to trying this again when we are going to have server meshing, when Akash will be there, when we will have an impact on price. I will be trying, and then we'll see the difference. If one particular organization blockades an area, how that is going to be affecting the prices. But until then, unfortunately, we're still going to have artificial prices.
Yeah, it's come a long way. All the the TypeScript logic has been redone in C# for the AI, which basically resulted in somewhere in the range of 3 order of magnitude increase. So we can basically easily simulate several million quanta, and we can do that at multiples of normal speed, and that's important because we need to be able to tweak certain levers, let the simulation run for an hour, and then see how stuff kind of balanced out and what kind of limits we hit on certain things. Did prices ever get too out of whack here? Was did the offering price for a particular mission ever get completely ridiculous given these parameters that we'd set up? We're in the final stages now of starting to connect Quantum to some of the back-end services, so that they're actually feeding data from the simulation to the services. The services have long been feeding that information then to the actual game servers, and then basically receiving it back. Like one of the most recent examples here is and it's kind of related to the dynamic event shop modifier stuff, which is the potential to add items, add new items to a particular shop. So right now that inventory has always historically been fixed, and so now with the modifier, since we can add something, it's the same thing you'll see in Quantum, which is shops may occasionally change some of their inventory items, and so it turns out that there's a little bit of work we need to do on the game server in order to support that. There's been a lot of focus on basically getting extracting chunks of information from the service beacons that we demonstrated before. We were generating the events, but they weren't actually making their way to the back end. So that information will be filtering up. In other words, where you see calls for assistance, calls for combat assistance,
we see them sometimes.
Will, in the not too distant future, be dictated via that quantum simulation. The price of fuel will be dictated by how much of a load there is in that particular area, and all of these things take time because the previous iteration we showed of quantum, as you got all these quanta going around, they didn't have at that time any concept of fuel or efficiency in terms of
it was just about shop prices. That's what it was about.
They basically got transport for free, and so a lot of those kind of things are being wrapped up. We spent relatively recently a good bit of time getting Quantum, the service, to actually ship, to basically be built and shipped with the game. So we're not currently exploiting it, but it's there right alongside, a litany of all these other services. So that piece, which was a significant effort, is now in and done. And basically, what that means is we've got the basic elements of plumbing to get all this information, going back and forth. And what we're focused on right now is actually, is realizing some of that stuff.
Star Citizen, we've got the plumbing.
Got the plumbing, yes. The good part about Squadron 42 coming late, says Adrian, is maybe by then high quality monitors actually make it on the market, and my gear will be good enough to run it too. Yeah, it's true, Adrian. That's also what I'm thinking. By the time Squadron 42 is up, maybe I'll have another computer, all right? I heard Paro is going to be like Rust, but not toxic. I don't know, man. I don't know about Rust. Why is your message hidden, Adrian? Let me show it here. Because these monitors right now are pretty shite. If you know your technicalities. Let me show this here. All right, boom, shown. Let's not be shy. Come on, YouTube. All right, let's continue here.
If we plug Tony Z into the servers, would they go faster?
Some of those questions, come on, guys. Twitch, ask the better questions.
Plugged into the servers. Let's see what else we got. Will some of the dynamic events allow us to choose sides if we're more into the outlaw phase?
Yeah. That is an interesting question, guys. Again, I didn't watch this before. I had no idea that these questions were. But yes, there are players who want to be, siding with Genothreat. In fact, guys, this is something that I said in another video a couple of days ago. I was this close from wanting to side with Genothreat myself because I don't like the current Imperator. Leilani Addison, didn't vote for her. I don't like her program. I wanted to have Paul LaSalle. And I was like, there's an event, we're going to attack the UEE. Someone was like, screw this, let's attack, let's punish the UEE people for electing aliens. And I was like, but that's like, Genothreat, no, they don't like aliens. I like aliens too, so that's why I didn't side with Genothreat. But is there going to be, especially that Ninetale event? Lots of people want to be pirates. There are pirates out there who are very excited with the prospect of getting a reputation system, being in good terms with those Ninetales. Being able to side with them. What do they say here?
Everybody on one side, right?
But it's not really. I mean, you're encouraged to be on one side, and yet plenty of players are electing to basically, they're not able to ally, with the Xenothreat, but they're certainly not being, friends to the local security forces.
They know, right? They know, and that's why, they're not saying that this is so bad. They're not griefers. Some of them are, but they're just players who are RP, and I was almost like them. Telling you guys, I was almost on the verge of fighting the UEE because of how angry I was with the result of the election. But at the same time, there are other people who are genuinely, against the UEE, and that's their character in the verse, and that's why they're bringing those mechanisms, crime stat, monitored zone to prevent the whole area from being a complete mess.
Yes, we will. We've actually got some of that stuff, like in the Ninetales lockdown. We're starting to play with some of those concepts to where you can basically work on the side of the guys helping to keep it locked down, or you can basically work on the side of the guys trying to break that blockade and basically free that area.
There we go, right? There we go. So actually the Ninetales event is going to be a double side, which is going to be a fantastic opportunity for PvP, by the way. Eagle 6 years. Operation Pitchfork finally arrives 8 years after, and the first thing people ask is to join the other side of Vandal Equality Club.
So the fact that there isn't a way to officially plug in with the other side in Xenothreat isn't indicative of some future design direction. It's just that's not what this one was about.
Not at all. In fact, it's actually quite the opposite, because as is always the case with Star Citizen, and you see this with so many things that we did with Xenothreat, right? Like with Xenothreat, we kind of started out with, okay, we're gonna have we're gonna have capital ships. So any player with bombers, they're set. And then the concern was, wait, a lot of players don't have bombers. How are they going to contribute? What if I've got a Hornet? And so we introduced the concept of, great, we'll have a lot of support, light fighters supporting these ships, and you can win. You can basically make make the Idris, retreat, and therefore win that battle simply by taking out all those light fighters. And so all of a sudden now it's like, regardless of which, whether you've got the heavy bomber, whether you've got the light fighter, you can contribute. But that still left the problem of, well, what if I'm not the kind of player that wants to do tons and tons of endless ship combat? What do I get to do in this Xenothreat thing? And that's where that's where
cargo
we
area.
started thinking, hey, let's have this whole salvage aspect where the javelins come in, you're basically restocking them. So now someone's got to go out and basically get the materials. And of course, we got to have a little bit of FPS combat, on that. But then all of a sudden, that forces you into that FPS mode. So we start looking and thinking, what if I actually do like the ship combat, but I want to be able to contribute to the restocking and not be forced into that. Well, you've got transport ships going back and forth, and on occasion you'll be asked to defend them. And if you successfully defend them, you basically wind up generating as much restocking benefit as if you were to fully salvage one of those derelict ships. And so the point I'm making is
basically they bring in player escort missions.
What exactly you want to do, what you find interesting, we try as much as possible to make sure that there's going to be a sufficient diversity.
Yeah, basically Tony is talking about the quantum sensitive commodity, right? There's one particular commodity, for those of you who haven't tried it, there's one particular commodity in that whole Xenothreat event, which cannot be transported via quantum travel. So you have to fly, from the wreck area to Jericho Station, which is, of course, dangerous because you may be intercepted by Xenothreat ships, and that is that particular here player escort mission, or part of the mission here that he's talking about.
Things to do so that you'll have a good time. And so right at the very top of that list would be, sure, a lot of players are going to, on occasion, want to be able to play the part of the bad guy. Some other players will want to, play the part of the good guy. And, some players, like if you think about, without going into too much detail on the Nine Tails, lockdown, when you're actually trying to deliver those supplies, are you trying to simply to take out all of the pirates in that area, basically remove the threat, or are you basically just trying to transport goods in and basically take advantage of the sky-high prices that are temporarily being paid because no one else can get through that blockade? And then if you're one of those guys trying to transport those goods through, all of a sudden there's a real need for you to hire, via service beacon, hire other people to protect you. And so you've got escort potential. You can basically be the guys helping to lock it down. You can be the guy helping to eliminate, the threat. There's many different ways to come at the
Or you get a Mercury Star Runner and you're the fastest player around and the other NPCs can follow you.
This particular situation, depending upon what interests you. And that is ultimately, where we're trying to go all across the game.
Plugins for players in different professions and who play different ways, for people who just prefer the FPS aspects, things for them to do, for the people who prefer ship combat, for the people who prefer shipping, stuff like that. That said, there have been a number of questions about...
What do you guys prefer, by the way, in the event? As far as I'm concerned, I love the PvE ship-to-ship combat, FPS combat. I don't mind the holding. I know my friend Segalian, for example. I'm not going to call him Segalian anymore because he's changed his name. There's double G now. My friend Segalian, he only likes to do cargo hauling. So that's probably going to be his cup of tea here, bringing in some of that cargo in his ship and then taking it to Jericho Station, perhaps. And that's what's fantastic with those events. They are indeed trying to cater to all the different size of the universe and bringing them all together. And then everybody's going to have a part to play. And that's what I like with those events. And they're going to continue polishing that particular aspect, and the fact that the Nine Tails event is going to allow players to take part of both sides, I think is a very nice touch.
Drilling down to other specific aspects, you just talked about making sure there's something for almost everybody in all these things, but on the flip side, would we ever consider, because PvP is quite important for a lot of folks who play Star Citizen, would we ever consider a PvP specific dynamic event, or a dynamic event that has no combat at all?
Well, the PvP stuff is, something you always, I mean, if you're going to have freedom, some people are going to basically, want to get in there, and muck it up, for other people. And so the way that I would aim to address that type of stuff is basically,
There you go. Talking about PvP.
within the rules of the system. In other words, that was why, and again, we're still in the early stages of the whole prison thing. That's why we have a prison concept, which is
Yes.
you can be a bad guy, and if you get caught, then you basically go, you go serve your sentence. And
Yeah, but the problem originally is that there was no monitor zone in the event, so that's why. That's people. Colin says he plays healer. Yeah, well, Colin, there will be need for healers in the future, Colin, because it's coming in this year, right? You like open missions? Tell me what to do. Well, open missions. I don't think open missions tell you what to do. Colin, the Colossus. I don't know about this. I forgot what I was gonna say.
now, when I say the early stages, I mean like right now, escaping from prison.
Yes. Yeah, originally there was no monitor zone, and then they fixed it. Said, okay, we're gonna bring a monitor zone. You want to play the bad guy? That's okay, but you're gonna go to prison. So that's what he's talking about here.
To walking through, a hole in the wall, and basically assuming you actually know the escape route, then it's just a matter of time. And that's another thing that we've got a few quarters out to basically do a major revision to make the entire process of escaping prison is going to be a challenge in and of itself. And there's going to be multiple ways. It's like, are you talking about basically bribing guards? Are you talking about coordinating with other players? Are you talking about being the guy that's simply trying to avoid the cameras and do the whole time thing? Setting up distractions. Setting a fire in the utility closet to basically draw the guards over so you can go over here. In other words, how many different ways can we support? Such that a player can feel as if they've crafted their own particular solution to the problem. And as much as
basically
possible,
player-based event,
things, right? You try to basically create a number of different systemic elements, and what will inevitably wind up happening is players will find clever ways to exploit them to particular effect. We're actually seeing this right now. It was a bit of a headache in this morning's meeting when I was talking about the Xenothreat stuff. We were going through PvP, and apparently, some players have figured out this super clever way of very quickly, sharing credits and getting out of prison, etc. And it's always the case, right? Which is it's an ongoing battle. When you provide a bunch of these raw elements, people will find unintended ways of basically accomplishing their effect. And I personally have always loved that, because that was always my favorite thing in games, was being able to craft not what I felt was my own unique solution. In other words, what I didn't want to do is expend copious amounts of time trying to figure out the one solution that the designer dictated would solve this particular puzzle. I'd rather give players a bunch of these logical elements, and they can string them together in all sorts of ways. And I kind of referenced that, just briefly earlier, like with the prison guard, which is, well, if prison guards respond as they must to audible events, then if you can do something that that generates a noise over here, then of course they should go to investigate. And so a clever player would basically say, hey, I can the same way that they'd go investigate a noise, and that would become a problem for you if you're trying to infiltrate an area.
That's what we've seen in CitizenCon, by the way.
A great means for you to temporarily distract them so that you can get through a door to escape the prison, etc. And so all of this stuff, I mean, it comes back to the same thing, which is giving players the freedom to basically play the game how they want, and having the system push back in logical fashion. So if we don't want a lot of player versus player, stuff in this area, then we should bring logical elements of the game, more security,
yes,
larger, penalties in that particular area, things of that sort to discourage it. It's still possible, but all of a sudden, I wouldn't aim to reduce it to zero.
Thank you, Tony. That is exactly what I've been telling to everyone out there, because there's some people who don't like the PvP happening right now in the Xenothreat, even said it breaks their gameplay experience. No. You have to review. If you think that, I'm sorry. That's my opinion. It could be could be wrong, and feel free to disagree with me, of course, in the comments or in the chat. But my take on this is that if you're playing a multiplayer game, you should expect to have some kind of interaction with other players, and that interaction may not always be friendly. It can be hostile too. That is how it is, and then it is up to the game developers, and that is exactly what Tony Z is saying here. It is up to the game developers to bring in the frame that is going to define how that PvP is going to happen. Thank you, Tony, for clarifying that.
Or to make it impossible, because impossible to me is never particularly fun. I'd rather make it so that if you want to basically accept the consequences of your actions, then more power to you. And in some places those consequences will be fairly minimal. In other places they'll be quite large. And you see this across the law system, where we've got 40 different infractions, and some things are viewed as a minor little infraction. You basically pay a fine. Other things actually lock you into prison. And right now, like I said, it's fairly easy to escape prison. It won't be in the future. That will actually become a much more significant challenge.
So it sounds like the approach that we will generally take is try to plug as many different groups and peoples and play styles into these.
Adrian, actually, I'm not that much of a good pilot, Adrian. I'm okay, but that would be a good idea. I would love to have if you want to have a fist fight in my ship, Adrian, please do.
As possible, try to provide something for as many play styles as we can, including PvP.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and PvP is just you always have to be sensitive to it, because a small number of players can always ruin the experience for a lot of other people.
Yes,
so
right.
So you do have to put a significant amount.
That's not PvP though.
Yeah, but how are you going to deal with that? And certainly, there are some aspects, to where you take, administrative, action. But in general, to me, if you have to take administrative action, it usually signifies that you failed at something within the game, right? It's like in the real world, if I go out.
Exactly. Thank you, Tony. Exactly. That's what it is. If there are griefers out there who ruin the experience of other players, it's because he failed at his job at creating a specific frame to prevent that, and he is going to fix that and put it into the game. That's why we're doing also those events. That's why it's still an alpha, so that in the future, when the game is going to be in a releasable state, those particular behaviors will be so rare that they will basically be non-existent. But as of right now, even though they are despicable, they're annoying, these guys are just pains in the arse, they are still necessary, because it helps people like Tony to bring in the mechanisms that are going to prevent that from happening in the future.
I wreak havoc. There will be very real and obvious consequences that you quickly suffer, and it should be the same thing in a game, to where you can do it, but you better be extremely clever about how you go about it, or else the system's going to respond in in logical fashion.
All right. Well, Tony, that's it. We made it to the end.
Wow.
You got anything else you wanna leave people with? Any final thoughts before Xenothreat, our first?
Well, what did we learn this week? All right.
Sometime.
Ninetale event.
Just if you haven't watched, we talked about the quantum stuff. For people that aren't familiar with it, they don't necessarily need to go back and watch that thing, since we will be doing a relatively comprehensive update. It won't be as singularly focused on that, because there's several other areas that I want to cover in at least brief fashion. Virtual AI and and a number of other things. It's probably, like I said, a few months out, give or take. And we're hoping to be able to show some concrete examples of how some of this, some of this technology is actually now integrated.
That's
in the game.
super cool.
Awesome.
I think that those events are going to definitely spice up this year, and it's good. I think that 2021 is going to be a more exciting year in terms of actual gameplay. I'm super excited for Xenothreat. Now I'm super hyped for what's going to come up with Fleet Week and the Ninetale events. It's going to be fun, guys. That's what I'm going to tell you.
Well, thank you so much, Tony. If the folks in the chat had their way, you do this once a month, every month for the rest of your life. But I understand that you actually have a job.
Ironically, if we did that, then there'd be less to discuss. You wouldn't get as much done. So.
There would, and you wouldn't. So yeah. So thank you so much. I'll let you get back to work. everybody watching, thank you so much for tuning in. This
All
great
right, guys.
Star
Well, that's
Citizen
going to be
Live.
all for this live stream. Thank you so much for watching this with me. It was a blast chatting with you. It always is. Dr. Frobin Colossus, thank you very much. I'll see you guys. I think I'm going to make a video about the Ninetales events, guys. What do you guys think? Probably I'll try to make it for Monday. Maybe I'll be doing the recording tomorrow. I'll try tonight to record some footage as well. I have to go back to GreenMax for that. And yeah, I'll see you guys next time for more Star Citizen content. Have a great day. Have a great night wherever you guys are. This is the Eradicator. I'll see you guys later.